Hey, I'm very excited to welcome you to a series of videos and sections on building web applications with Python. We'll be using two web frameworks to build the next apps, Flask and Django. These are the best frameworks for building web applications with Python. Flask is best when you build relatively smaller apps, and Django is better for larger applications. So, should you learn Flask or should you learn Django? The answer is simple. If you are building web applications, you should learn both Flask and Django. You'll understand why and when to use Flask and when to use Django after you have built the next two apps. So this app, which will be this one here. So with Flask, we're gonna build this simple web app, but this web app actually does include some very crucial aspects of web development. Through this form, the users can submit a simple job application form. So let's say the user email address is app8django@gmail.com. They place like an available start date when they want to start the job. So they can type in the date here, or they can use the calendar here. And then they can select one of these options, whether they are student, unemployed, employed, or self-employed. Let's select student. And then they submit that form. And upon successful submission of the form, the user will get this notification here that the form was submitted successfully, plus they will get an email to their email address. So let's check for an email here. Yeah, there we go. So the server, the web app, sent this email from the server email address, which is app8flask@gmail.com, to the user email address, which is app8django@gmail.com. Plus the employer can see the data, so all the data that the user submitted, that the applicant submitted, the employer can see those data in the database. For more details, please watch the next videos. So in the next one, we'll start building this. We'll start the structure of the app, create the directories and the files, and then start adding code to that as you learn Flask in depth. So I'll see you in the next video. Thanks. Hey, welcome back. Let's start building our Flask application form app. So let's jump into PyCharm and create a new project. So you want to go to File, New Project. So I'm going to put this inside users AS, which is an existing directory, and then app16 Flask form. This will be created. This directory will be created. I'm leaving the other parameters as they are and press on create. So there we go. And a Flask app has this structure. It has a templates directory and a static directory. So please name them as you see here. The names of these folders are very important. So static with lowercase letters, templates with lowercase letters. And then we also create a new Python file, which usually has the name app.py or main.py. Either way, it's fine. Then inside templates, you want to create a new HTML file and name it index.html. The name can be different, but please use the same name as me, because this name then will be referred from the app.py file. So in the Python code, we will be sending this HTML code to the front end, to the web page here. So this web page is built using HTML, and that HTML code will go inside index.html. So press enter. PyCharm will add some sample HTML. I'll just select this and delete it. So that's what we have, two empty files, and that's the directory structure of a Flask app. So we have static templates and app.py. Inside static, you may want to put files such as images. For example, if your app has some images, your website or your web application contains images, you put those images inside that static folder. Or if your website has some CSS code or some JavaScript code, you put those CSS files and JavaScript files inside the static folder. As a start, let's add some code in the app.py file. So we want to import from Flask, import the Flask class. Now Flask is not installed yet, so you want to hover your mouse here and go to install package Flask. So that will install Flask. In my virtual environment, you see I have this venv here. When I created the PyCharm project, PyCharm created this virtual environment. That's good to have. And then we want to create an app instance using that Flask class. And this gets as argument the underscore underscore name underscore underscore. And then we say app.run debug equal to true, port equal to 5001. For example, you can put anything here. If we run this, let's try to run it. So right click and run app. You should see this message normally, so that means this is working. And you can access the app at this URL. So you can click that URL to open it with your default browser, or you can copy the URL and go to your preferred browser, or you can right click here and perhaps PyCharm will show this context menu here. So you can go to open in Chrome and you should see this normally, not found for now. So the app is working. You didn't get something like, oh, there is nothing here. So if we quit this app, so stop it with that red button, now it says process finished. Now if you go to your browser, reload that, you'll see this site can't be reached. So this is a different error from that one. So the other error, which is when we run the app, so it's running now, this says not found, which means this particular page, the home page, was not found. And similarly, you'll get something else. For example, if you go to my page /my page, you again will get not found. So the app is working, but these pages have not been implemented yet, and that's what we want to do next. So in between these two lines, here we're going to handle requests, URL requests, or technically known as HTTP requests. So when you load the page, one web page, with your enter key in your browser, you are making an HTTP request. So that's what Flask is for. Flask can handle those requests. So with Python, you receive those requests and then you allocate that request to a particular HTML page, right? So if the user is visiting the home page, which is this one here, then with some Python codes here, we'll say, oh, get that home page and then show that index.html page here on the website, right? And similarly, when the user goes to my page, then we'll send something else. We'll have another HTML file here, mypage.html, and we'll render that in the website. So that's how Flask works. So what we'll do next is we will populate this area here with code so that we can handle those HTTP requests. I'll see you in the next video. Hey, welcome back. In this video, we will write some code in between these two lines. So in this line, we created an app instance using the Flask class. So this represents the instance, the app basically. And then the app runs here, so that executes the web app so that we can visit that web app through its URL. Now in between here, we want to handle those HTTP requests. So let's start with the first request. App.root. Let's handle the home page. The home page is represented by this slash. So if you were to handle another page, such as your URL /mypage, then you'd have to write here /mypage. But now it's just a slash. So with that, that's a decorator. With that symbol, we are writing a decorator. And that decorator will call this function. Let's call this function index, right? And so when the user visits that web page, we want to return the index.html page. Index.html page. But we don't do this, we do something else. I mean, you can do this actually, but you'll not get the expected results. So let's try this. So let's run the app. Right, go here, reload. So make sure you are reloading the home page, that one. This is what you get. So that index.html is simply shown as a string. So this is just a string. It can be anything, right? So if you do that, reload, you say you get anything, right? Now, what we want to do instead is we want to say render template. This is a function. But we need to import that function from Flask. So from Flask, import Flask, comma, render template. So there we go. And then if we reload the page now, we'll get nothing because there's nothing inside index.html. So let's write some HTML code here. HTML starts with that doc type HTML tag followed by an HTML tag. So opening the tags and closing the tags with this slash here. And in between goes the body. So make some tabs here, use tab to indent. And let's have a heading here, H1, job application form. So now I can go here, I can simply refresh with Ctrl R or Command R, and we'll get that heading here on top, right? So this is the visible part of an HTML page. Whatever you put inside the body tags, you'll see it on the web page. But there are some other metadata you need to input, and you do that inside the head tags. So write some head tags, opening head tags and closing head tags. And in between these two, you want to have a meta tag. You want to specify the character set at UTF-8 and close that tag, so meta tag. And you need another meta tag here, which specifies the viewing options of your app, such as the parameters of the width, initial scale, set it to 1, shrink to fit equals to no, and then close that meta tag. So this makes sure that your app will work well in many browsers. So that's about the HTML document for now. You can find this HTML code attached, so the index.html file attached in the lecture resources. So if you don't want to type those in, just copy paste my code. So let's try to see if everything works fine. Yeah. So as I said, this is in the body text. So that's the visual part, the visible part, and everything you have here, these are metadata which indicate the behavior of the browsers, how the browsers should handle your web app. So that's about this lecture. Our Flask app is running, so now we're ready to add some more content to the HTML front end, so which is those input fields of our application form, the job application form. So let's do that in the next video. See you. Hey, welcome back. In the previous video we coded the index.html file and also the app.py file. So these two files are producing this web page. The visible part though is the responsibility of the index.html file. So let's work some more on the front end. So the front end is the HTML code. The backend is the Python code. Right, so this is what we have so far. Just a heading here, this text, and let's add some input fields. A first name and a second name field. How do we do that? Well, as I mentioned before, everything that is visible goes inside the body tags. So we have this h1 tag already. We want to add another one. Let's indent here. This will be a form, right? So we use the form tags. Inside the form tags, we will have labels and input fields. So label, for example, first name, and just under that goes an input tag. Now you can notice that some tags have their corresponding closing tags, but other ones, such as the input tag, does not have a closing tag. So with inputs, you write here the parameters of that tag. So the type will be text for this input, the ID will be first name, and the name will be first name as well. So these will be needed later on because we refer to that from the Python file. And so name is important for that part. And we want to make this a required field. So that's it. Oh, you need to remove the comma here. So you'll usually get these kind of highlighting when you have some issues there. So for example, you can hover your mouse here and it says attribute comma is not allowed. So you may want to delete that. Also, we have some highlighting here in the labels. Unknown HTML tag labels. So this is actually label, not a labels. And you also want to add here for is equal to first name, and this refers to the ID. So if you change the ID to something else, for example that, this will be highlighted in red, so it says invalid ID reference. So you need to mention an ID here. So basically you are tying these two together. And now if we go to the web page, so make sure that your app is running. My app is running, so I don't need to rerun it again. I can just go here, refresh with Ctrl+R or Command+R, and you'll see the label and the field. So the field is this, the label is this. Now, there's also one more thing we may need to add here, and that is the div tags. Div, like this, and you want to cut that and place it just below here. So notice what I'm doing here, the hierarchy. So we have the form, it opens here and it closes here, right? And then part of the form are these children. So div is the child of the form, so to say. And then div now, which opens here and closes in here, has these children, a label and an input tag, or elements in other words. Why did I put div here? Well, because for now this will not change anything, so you can refresh the page. It doesn't change anything, but this allows us to actually keep these two organized, and then we apply some styling to this div. Later on we'll add some class is equal to some Bootstrap classes, but let's do that later. For now we'll leave it like that, and then I'll select these 4 lines, so the div together with its 2 children, and I'll press Ctrl D or Command D, and that will duplicate that div. You see, we had these, now we had these also. And I did this because now I want the last name as well. So I want to write here last name, type is text, the ID is last name, the name is also last name, last underscore name. And it's a required field as well. So go to the web page, refresh, and we've got these 2 fields and 2 labels. Don't worry about the look for now. I know that these are very close to each other, but we'll fix that with CSS and Bootstrap later on. So for now, let's just make sure the structure of the front end is accurate. So we have a first name, we have a last name, then we have the email input. So duplicate those with Ctrl D or Command D. So that is, just say email here. Email for the label text. then this will be email. The type is email. So this is one of the input types. We have text, we have email. It's good to have email here, even though you can also use text. But having email means HTML will validate the user input there. So if the user is typing in something which doesn't contain the email @ symbol, then the app will reject, will not submit those entries. So it's very important to have email as the type here. Let's use email for the ID and the name as well. So that will reflect to this. So we have 3 entries. Let's add some more. The date. The applicant will select the dates that they are available for the new job. So this will be the label for the date. Let's say available start date, type, date, ID date, name date. Right, let's see what this brings up. So there we go. By setting date as the type here, that will give us the correct widget, the correct field for the date. So depending on your browser though, this may look different. So on Chrome it will look something like this. On different browsers can be in different styles. So I hope that's clear. And the last element we want to add is a series of radio buttons. So we want to ask the user what is their current occupation, and we want to do that by showing them some options which they can select. And let's duplicate the date widget, so this one here. Let's duplicate it with Ctrl D or Command D. So that's the duplicated code. And this is going to be the first option, employed, and remove that colon. So for employed, so that will be the ID of the input type. So input type, this will be a radio type, right? So that's the label of this radio widget. The ID is going to be employed. The name also employed. And this will look like this on the website. So employed and the option there. Now this is on the left because the label is before. So if you want to change that, you want to cut this. So put your cursor anywhere in this line and press Ctrl X or Command X. And then go to the next line and put that in its place. So the input widget first and then the label. And that will look like this. So now it looks better. Let's add another one. And before we do that, we also need a label for the group of buttons. So label, and let's say current occupation, right? And this will look like this. So current occupation. We need a break line. To create a break line, we need the BR tag. So the current occupation label, a break line, the widget, and the label of the widget. So this will look like this now. Current occupation, employed, and let's add another one. So everything stays inside these div tags, right? So now I select input and label and I duplicate it. So again, this will be type radio, the ID. Let's add the other option. The first option was employed, the second option is unemployed. The current occupation of the applicant. For unemployed, and the label, the actual text that the user will see on the website will be unemployed as well, with an uppercase letter. So these are invisible, right? All these are metadata, but this is what the user sees. So we refresh and we see this. It's not ideal. We will improve it, we will make it vertical later on, but let's keep it as it is for now. So the user can select one of them. However, currently that's not possible. So the user might select more than one option, which is not what we want. We'll fix that, but before that, let's add the other options as well. So let's duplicate that, and we have 3. Now I'll make some break lines between each group so it's more readable, and so this will be self-employed. I'll copy that to the name and here in the label as well. So this is self-employed. Right. One more time for the student status. So student name, student, for student, text, student. Let's refresh. So there we go. Employed, unemployed, self-employed, student. And let's fix this issue now so that we force the user to select only one option. To do that, we should place all these 4 radio buttons inside a div. So let's do that. Let's go here with tab, create a div tag. So you want to cut that out. You want to go here, paste that, fix the indentation, right? And then we want to select all that block and press tab to indent it. So notice we have 2 divs, right? We have that div, it opens here and it closes in here, and that div element encapsulates all the radio buttons plus this label here, current occupation, plus the break line. And then we have this other div element which opens here and it closes here. This encapsulates only the radio buttons, and now we can go inside this div tag here and add an ID which will be equal to occupation. Now this ID here, occupation, should reflect the name of these radio buttons if we want to group them together. So instead of having a different name for each radio button, we should have occupation for all of them, because currently if we go here, we refresh again, we can select all of them. But see now, if I change this to occupation, so I'll copy that name to every button. So I'm working on the name attributes, right? Not on the ID attributes. So we've got occupation as the ID of the div, occupation as the names of the input elements. And now we go here, refresh, and the user can now select only one of the options, because the options now are grouped together using that trick. And lastly, there's one more element we need to add to the form, and that is the button, the submit button. So we'll add that button somewhere here, and when the user presses that button, the user entries such as the first name, the last name, they'll put here the email address, the date, and the selection here. All these data will be sent to Python, right? In the Python script, we'll get them as strings, and then we'll send those strings as text by email to the user email address. So the user will enter an email address here, and we'll send an email to the user telling them, oh, you sent us these data, this is your application, just so that they have that as a confirmation. And then we also store this data in an SQL database. So let's add that button. Let's go to index.html again. So we are here. Note the divs. So that's the div for the available start widget. That's the div for the radio button group. So from here up to here, so we have 2 div elements, right? And after the second div, which is between the form closing tag and the closing div here, just here we want to add a button element with a submit label. So that's the label of the button, and also the type will be button. With that, if we go to the website, we refresh, we should see this button here. So it doesn't do anything for now, but we'll fix that in the next videos. So that's what I wanted to show you in this video. We built the structure of the front end. We have everything now here. These don't look very visually appealing for now, so in the next video I want to focus on adding some style to this page using Bootstrap. So let's implement that in the next video. I'll see you there. Hey, in the previous video we built this front end here, which has these series of widgets, and now we want to add Bootstrap to our project. Bootstrap is a CSS library. So CSS is a language that adds style to HTML elements. So we want to work on the index.html code. The very first thing we want to add here is a linked element inside the head elements. So we have the head tag here and the closing head tag in here. So we want to add the link, and inside link here you want to say rel style sheet. So we want to specify where the style sheet is located. The style sheet should be a file which contains CSS code. So you can put that file inside static here. So create a file and say something like main.css, but we don't want to do that. We want to use a remote file which has been written already. So that is the Bootstrap library, and that remote file is located in https cdn.jsdeliver. You can find this link attached in the lecture resources. So I'm also going to copy that link and paste it here. So that's a complete link element. So it should look like this. So the name of this file is min.css, and this file is stored somewhere on a remote server. If you're curious, you can copy that link and just paste it here, reload, and what you'll see is CSS code. So all that now, that contains classes, so all that code, actually part of that code can be used in our HTML script. How? Well, for example, let's start with the h1 tag here. So we want to work inside the body tags, right? So in the h1 tag, you want to add a class attribute which is equal to empty-4 space mb-4. And if you go to the web page and refresh it, you'll see that this changes to something else. So what we just did is we specified the margin for the top and the bottom of the h1 tag, and so these are Bootstrap classes. We can apply classes for other objects as well. One important class is the container class, which applies to the entire content. So the entire content is inside the body tags. And to apply that class to all our elements, we need to add here a main div tag, div, right? And this should be closed somewhere before the body tag here. So you open div just under the opening body tag, and you close div just above the closing body tag, right? And then you want to select that div, the entire element up to here. So everything in between the body tags you want to select and press tab to indent it. Things will still work if you don't indent it, but indenting makes the code readable, more readable. So now we add here a class is equal to container. And if you refresh the page, So you can see that now we have some margin here on the left. So the app is starting to look better already. Let's add some more classes, Bootstrap classes. The div under the form, we want to add a class is equal to form group mb-4. Let's refresh the page. And so this is what we've got. So we've got some spacing under the first name, right? So we just changed the div of the first element, which is the first name, this one here. So we added some margin at the bottom. MB means margin bottom. And this here is also a class, a Bootstrap class, which specifies some other styling for group elements. Let's do the same for the other widget, last name. So class is equal to form group mb4. Same goes for the other one, email. So I'll just copy this div and just replace this div of the email. So there we go. The other div of the date class, of the date element. There we go. And lastly, in here, so the div just above the label current occupation. So current occupation, here is the div. We want to replace that with this div, or you just type in the class, whatever you prefer. And so yeah, that's it. Let's see what we've got. So we have some spacing between the elements, so that's looking better now. And what's next? Well, next is, you see, we have the first name label, the last name label just next to the fields. We want to put the first name label above its corresponding field, and same for the other labels as well. To do that, you should go to each input element, input type text ID first name, and in here you want to add class is equal to form-control, right? So let's see the change here. For first name, you see now first name is on top here, the label, and then we have this input box which looks quite better. So you see the highlighting when I put the cursor here, that's different from this one down here. So that's much better, more visually appealing, I would say. Let's do the same for the last name input element. Class is form control, right? The email as well, class is form control. So make sure you are putting the class inside the input element, not inside the label. Same for the date, class is form control. And then we have the radio buttons, which should take something else. But let's refresh the page for now. So there we have first name, last name, email, available start date. So that's looking good. Now these ones here, we can change them to something else, to another style. We can make them vertical. You want to go below BR in this div, which has the ID, occupation. So this div contains all those radio buttons, right? Now inside this div, we want to add a class of btn group vertical. Oh, in quotes. So btn-group-vertical. And if you refresh the page now, you will be able to see the buttons stacked vertically. However, the labels are down here, so let's improve that further. You want to go to the first input element of the first radio button, and you want to add a class of btn-check space form control. So two classes, btn-check and form control. And you also want to apply a class to the label element. Class is equal to quotes btn outline secondary. Let's go and refresh the page. So this is what we've got here. So that circle was transformed into this toggle button style for this radio button. And so we have this one and these three. Let's make all of them the same. So I want to copy that class and paste it in the other radio button here, right, in the other one. So I'm working on the input elements first here as well, and then I'll get the class of the label element, this class, paste it in here, space between the class and the 4 attributes for this label as well, and this one as well, right? Let's see. Yeah, there we go. So now we can select one of them. Let me zoom out a bit. So that is looking good. And let's finish the submit button as well. So that is looking good. Let's also stylize the submit button. So we locate the button element and we add a class btn. So btn is the class that specifies a certain style for buttons. So basically you're telling the HTML document that this button should be styled according to the btn class. So in the Bootstrap CSS file, which I showed you earlier, this class is defined and the attributes of this class are written in that document, in that CSS document. So for example, that the button should have round corners and the text should be this far from the borders of the button and the font family should be this and that. So when you say this, you are basically specifying all those properties, the round corners and so on. So instead of writing those manually, you just call this class, and so that means your button will look good according to the Bootstrap standards. And then you also have things like btn-secondary. This specifies the color, in this case, of the button. So we also use this for this one here. You'll see the difference. So let's go and refresh. You see now with that secondary option, the button is filled in gray color. But when you say btn outline secondary, the button is not filled, but the outline is gray. So that's the difference. Here I'd also like to add MB4 for this button, so some margin below, so there we go, so that the button is not close to the border of the web page. Now we have some more space down here. So that's about it, but we need to add 2 more elements here, and that is just before the body tags. So down here, before the body closing tags, we want to add these 2, which you can find attached in the lecture resources. So these 2 will make it possible to show like a notification message here when the user presses the submit button. So basically these specify links to JavaScript code which is needed to display that notification message. So that's the completed script. I do believe that this looks better now. I know that it is subjective, the style is a bit subjective, but we can all agree that this looks better than before. So thanks a lot for following, I'll see you later.